Hello, my name's Martin, and this video is my response to the questions I've been asked on Facebook groups about the lighting setup for my 32 scale Hornet. Alright, here it is. As you can see, it's still very much work in progress. And it's going to take at least a few more weeks. But given that all the lighting works, I think I can already share some information on how I did it. Now, before we move into how it's all set up, just a couple of thoughts to share, a couple of design choices that I took. First of all, this is still mainly a scale model, so the accuracy takes a priority over the extra features like lighting, in a way that no wire should be visible. The attention to detail accuracy takes priority. Let me put it this way. The second thing is the power supply. I decided to use the USB phone charger because it's a fairly low voltage and it's widely available. So if I ever break one, I can always get one for next to nothing. And of course, I wanted to avoid the need to replace the batteries from time to time. I've built a few models before where I included a compartment for the batteries, but in the longer run, that's not the best solution. That's not the optimal choice, especially in a model like a Hornet, which doesn't have the obvious place that would be easily accessible for the batteries. So instead, I decided to copy on the idea that I used building my previous model, so Tamiya's F4 Phantom, also in 32 scale, and I supplied the power to that one using the landing gear. So of course, the in large scale, in 32 scale, many models have metal landing gear. And that was the case in Tamiya's Phantom, and it's the same case with Hornet. Of course, it doesn't come like that out of the box. I bought the aftermarket metal gear, but given the weight of the model, the one that comes out of the box from the kit, the plastic one with reinforced with the metal struts, it after a while it tends to well, sag a little bit underweight. So I decided to replace it right away with a metal one, and I'm also using this the fact that it's metal. I can use that to supply the model with power. So obviously right now I have it connected just using the wires attached directly to the gear legs, but the solution that I want to use in the final form will take the shape of a couple of small spring-loaded contact points on the base that I'm going to build, and those springs will be touching the landing gear legs. They're going to be pretty much not visible, hidden behind the tires, and at the same time I'll be able to move the model freely. It won't be attached to the base. So that's going to give me a lot of flexibility, while also there's no need for basically run the wires through any I don't have to do any opening in the surface of the model to run the wires through it. So yeah, that's the two main choices that I took: the power supply, and the accuracy takes the priority over everything I do. So main principle used by these lights is the electroluminescence, so phenomenon of material emitting light when electric current is applied to it. Here we have a simple drawing of how such a light is constructed. So we have a couple of conductive layers, and sandwiched in between them is the light emitting layer, as well as non-conductive layer that separates these two conductive layers, preventing a short. The second thing to remember is that this kind of a light requires fairly high voltage in the range of 100 volts at least. As well, it has to be the alternating current. And so after a ton of searching, I came across these. These are 4x4 inches for those still using the Imperial system, or roughly 10x10 centimeter panels, available in various colors. And these are very much electroluminescent lights. I then ordered a couple of these, as well as the couple of inverters that are required to power these panels. And well, once I received them, I realized that finally I've got something I can work with. And so here is what I have left. So as you can see, this is very, very thin indeed, flexible. Originally it had this kind of a protective layer on each side of these panels. It's a laminated foil. No, it would extend about 2 or 3 millimeters out of the edge, but I've trimmed it all out. And then of course the back of this panel needs to be exposed in order to attach the wires. So I would apply my axle knife's blade on the very edge of this panel, slowly splitting the laminated foil. I would basically slowly peel it off, exposing the raw material underneath. Next thing that needs to be purchased, sometimes it comes with these panels depending on which offer you take, or can be bought separately, is this thing. It's an inverter that takes two AA batteries, runs on 3 volts then in total. And basically what it does, it converts the low current, low voltage current into high voltage alternating current. So coming back to the principles that we were talking about earlier, as you can see, there are two separate layers of two separate conductive layers, separated by this white stripe. It actually extends underneath. That's the non-conductive layer that separates these two. So in order to make it work, the current needs to be applied on each to each layer. So if we put power button on, as you can see, it all lights up. Of course, this button operates the various modes. It can give a steady light or flash, but that's I guess we're only interested in the steady light. Another thing is attaching the wires. Of course, due to the nature of this material, they can't be soldered. So the only other option I found viable is this thing, a glue. It's electronics glue made by Technical something or other. It consists of very small particles of silver, and once it dries, it becomes conductive. So making this work is actually fairly easy. Let me just mount this on the desk so it won't move too much. I basically take two fine wires. I'm gonna need some tape to actually make them stop moving. I would attach each of these wires to each side, each conductive layers, which is a fairly painful process. And now, as they more or less touch this layer, I think it's fairly decent. We can apply the glue. Now it needs to be properly shaken. Can use the package on this glue says you need to apply you need to use the supplied brush because otherwise it won't work. Well, it will. I'm using a toothpick. So as you can see, I'm soaking actually the side of this area on the panel and a wire. Give it a decent coat, and same goes on the opposite side. Now again, I'm very careful not to spread the glue over that white stripe, as later on once it becomes conductive, it's gonna create a short and stop panel from working. Alright, so now the glue is applied, so we can leave it to set, and we're gonna return in a few moments to see if it works. Well, funny enough, they say the glue needs to dry perfectly for 24 hours, whatever. Well, it appears to be working right off the bat. It's gonna take some time for it to dry, although not that long. I would give it an hour or so tops. And what I recommend doing next is covering this area in some kind of two-part epoxy glue. It's gonna help securing the wires in place, because as I said, this electroconductive glue is very weak, so it's super easy to peel these wires off while manipulating the panel. I think it happened way too many times when I was building my Hornets, so I think the epoxy glue is gonna be the best solution. I also tried super glue, but I found, or CA glue, but I found that vapors from this glue somewhat penetrate this top layer and corrupt the lighting of the panel. They say somehow corrupt the properties of the panel, so it doesn't work as well as in the area where the glue is applied. So two-part epoxy probably the best solution, because it doesn't react in any way with the surface. So of course, once we have the it is much easier, of course, to attach these wires to already trimmed down panel. So I would first cut it, for example, like here, making a long thin stripe, and only then I would attach the wires. Because the less you manipulate this thing, once the wires are attached, the better. And if everything goes well, at the end you should have this kind of a thing. So long stripe with the wires attached to it. This one's already covered with the epoxy glue, but it's helping to some extent, but it's still super easy to pull this wire. I just did it a moment ago by accident, but it still works once I've put it back in. So again, be super delicate. So now we have this working stripe. As you can imagine, from there on, the job is super simple. You just take a razor saw, cut the opening on the model where this light would go, insert the light from the inside of the fuselage, and just attach it and then glue it in with the super glue. And this is how it looks on the model. So as you can see, the opening is that I've made for these stripes is larger than it would be dictated only by the size of the light itself, but I decided to give myself some sort of a margin in case something goes wrong with the panel around the edges, if it reacts somewhat with the super glue. Now that the light is too big, we need to slightly restrict its size, and it's super difficult to do it with the camera here, but I'm gonna use the photo etched formation lights. I think these came from Edward. I simply glued them onto the surface, and there's gonna the black primer or black paint is gonna go all around them. Restricts that's gonna stop the light from shining through. So the only bit of the panel that's gonna be still exposed and emitting light is gonna be the inside of this frame. So, well, as it should be. And now that we know how these lights work and how to attach them, the second thing is powering them. So as I already showed you, I bought a couple of these inverters that convert the DC into high voltage AC that's required. Now these inverters are of course battery operated and fairly bulky, so there is no way on God green's earth that I'd put that into a model. But it can be disassembled to extract what's important. So here's one that I've disassembled and discarded because it got damaged at some point. But we can see how that thing is built and what's important to us. So of course here we would find springs, the connectors for the batteries. So I replaced them with the length of wire instead to plug it, to connect it with the power source. Here we have the wires that already transmit the high voltage AC. So these would be connected to the panel. There was also an LED diode and a switch that I both basically removed. And in order to lock it in a certain mode, I soldered a length of wire in here. So this way, once the power is applied to it, it's gonna basically operate with a constant light. So no flashing, doesn't have to be turned on. Once the power is applied, the light comes on, and that's it really. And here is how it looks on the model. You can clearly see that board, the whole board, glued in just behind the intakes, the demold seamless intakes, by the way. And when it comes to the power, that's power source. That's going to be supplied by these. As you can see, this is white metal, and there's going to be I'm going to require a base. I'm going to have to make a base for the model. There's going to be two spring-loaded contact points in a base. So once model is placed on the base, these contacts will touch each of the gear legs, closing the circuit and supplying the power. So it's so far so it looks like it's already working. So I think that's it when it comes to the powering up and when it comes to the setup of the model. So this is how I've set it all up. It appears to be working, at least for me. Now, a couple of points before I conclude. One is on the resistors. I've discovered that 5 volts applied directly to that inverter will break it, will burn it out. So using trial and error method, I figured that 20 ohm resistor is actually just right for me. If I tried to add 2 of these, the power supplied to the inverter wouldn't be enough. So I decided to keep 120 ohm resistor. It doesn't seem to be getting hot anymore, and lights are operating fine. But take that with a grain of salt, because I'm not an electrician. So if you can do the calculations on your own, please. But yeah, I'm just it appears to be working for me. The second bit is on the color. So you can get these EL panels in various colors, like blue, green, red, etc. I went for the blue one because my initial thoughts were, alright, when it's going to be off, the color of the panel wall itself looks very natural, like on a real plane. While some of the photos I've seen around the internet of these lights, when powered on, they had some bluish tint to it. Now later on I discovered that they should be green indeed. But my idea is that I'm going to correct this with a layer of Tamiya's transparent yellow, and then another thin coat of fluorescent paint that comes from the can. So that should give me both the green lighting and also kind of a natural color, the realistic color of while these lights are off. But that is I've done some experiments. It seems to be working, but we'll see. And if you have any questions about the whole setup, please let me know in a comment below. I'll try to help. And also let me know if you want to see another video like this one on the cockpit lights that I did. So side consoles and MFDs. And for now, thanks very much for watching.